During his 2025 State of the State address, Governor Greg Gianforte made a clear request to lawmakers to build more prison beds. 2 years ago, the legislature approved a $200 million project in that effort, and now Gianforte asks for another $150 million to add 500 beds to the Montana State Prison. In the meantime, hundreds of Montana inmates are being transferred to private prisons in Arizona and Mississippi as a stopgap for a prison population growing faster than the state can manage. Montana PBS's Sam Wilson looks at the impact of prison overcrowding on Montanans and what could be done to help.
Every evening around 5 p.m., Ellen Binkley and her 2 boys wait for a phone call.
Sent to you from
John Binkley,
an inmate at Saguaro Correctional Center. To accept this call, press 5.
So when Binkley's husband didn't call for a few days, in August of 2024, she knew something was off.
I hadn't heard from him in a couple days, and so you immediately get that punch in the gut. I start looking online at the inmate roster, and that's where you can kind of find the updates on the location. The next day I called the prison. I was like, is he even alive? They can't tell me anything, of course, but they could just say he was alive. It took a few days at least before he could make a phone call. And then he eventually called me and said that he was down in Arizona. It took about 24 hours on a bus to get down there.
John Binkley had served 3 years of a 50-year sentence when he was transferred to the Saguaro Correctional Center, owned by private prison company Core Civic. For his family, that means visits are much rarer and much more expensive.
To visit him for a long weekend, it's $3,000 if I can do it pretty conservatively for the 3 of us. I guess that's just what we do, right?
Binkley and 363 other Montana inmates have been transferred to Arizona because Montana has run out of space. Every adult prison in the state is at capacity, and more than 400 inmates are stuck in county jails. And though hundreds of new prison beds are planned for construction at Montana State Prison, ground has yet to be broken. To make do in the meantime, the Department of Corrections has found empty prison beds in other states. In 2024, DOC Director Brian Gutkin painted a picture of the situation for legislators during a presentation.
So we're crystal clear and transparent. We're full. Not only are we full, we're full in Arizona. We're backed up in the jails. So
overcrowding in prisons is not a new issue in Montana, and it shows no sign of abating. Since 2000, the resident population of Montana has grown by 26.3%, while the prison population has risen by over 65%. The rate of incarceration in the U.S. overall has been decreasing.
We've got a lot of challenges with corrections in our state. Prisons are overflowing, crime doesn't seem to be going down, and we're not devoting the resources and the right approach that we need to address this problem.
We're trying to keep people out of the prison. It's expensive. It's not necessarily good at rehabilitation, although it does have more rehabilitation in the jail. Very rarely does somebody on their first felony, unless it's a massive felony, go to prison.
When Dustin Sorley was charged with his first felony of verbal intimidation in 2022 after a domestic dispute, he says his lawyer told him he would likely get a deferred sentence and counseling. Instead, Yellowstone County sentenced him to 10 years, with 7 suspended.
It's not fun, for sure. The deputy comes up and handcuffs you, and your whole world gets turned upside down. And then from there on, it's like you're stuck in quicksand. And the harder you try to help yourself, the more you sink.
In 2017, legislators in Montana passed a raft of bills to try to help low-risk offenders like Sorley return to their lives, and to avoid needing more prison beds. The bills were called the Justice Reinvestment Initiative.
It came with a lot of good innovations. It talked about that if you were on good behavior for a certain amount of time, you could be on, you could have less supervision. You could not be fully off probation, but you could have to stop reporting to a probation officer as long as things were good. Unfortunately, in 2023, the legislature passed House Bill 689, where essentially we backed away from a standard that would have given judges more flexibility to deal with people who were not committing the most serious violations.
Josh Rackey was the author of HB 689. He says many of the 2017 reforms were a step backwards.
No one goes back to prison unless they, commit another crime or are breaking their probation, right? So they're doing those things. And so yes, if we don't check on them or if we allow them to be unlaw-abiding in the community, that's true. We won't send as many people to prison, right? So that part's true. But in the end, as I said, I think what the lesson that teaches some folks is, well, I can get away with this, I can get away with this, I can get away with this. Now I've done this, well, why can't I get away with this? Well, it's too late, you're going to prison.
Probation and parole are different. Probation is administered by the court system and is built into sentencing. Parole is determined by the Board of Pardons and Parole, and inmates become eligible after they've served a quarter of their prison time. Both lead to supervised release, which can easily be revoked.
Parole is the release valve to overcrowding. Parole is an individualized look at each person. I can't tell you the number of people who go into the system and how different they are when they're getting out. Some people don't change. Some people do.
9 months into his sentence, Sorley became eligible for parole.
They go over everything with you. They know everything about you. And my first board hearing, I was granted straight parole, and I got told I could go home. As nerve-wracking as it was. And then somewhere down the line, I got that parole taken from me. I went through a rescission hearing.
Dustin, where do we go from here?
Well, I'm just wondering where the violation occurred, sir, because I've never violated any provisions or stipulations of the order of protection.
Also, as part of the 2017 Justice Reinvestment Initiative, the Board of Pardons and Parole became a paid position. Since then, parole grants have sharply decreased, which means more people stay in prison for longer. The board declined an interview for this story, but their website says that parole is a privilege, not a right. For inmates, it can be a frustrating process to navigate.
It feels like the parole board already knows what they're going to do with you, but when you walk in there and get rejected, it's pretty cut and dry. It's, oh, nope, we're going to deny you at this time, and then we'll see you in a year or 2 or 3. Some people face 6, and in a place that you can't help yourself. That's what's hard about it. They can give you recommendations, like I got given a class. Well, that class wasn't a priority till I was coming up to see the board again. I thought, when I walked out of the room, I thought when I got given a victims impact class, I'm like, okay, I'll get into this class, I'll get going, I'll get this done. That isn't the case. I had a year to take a 3-month class, and they waited till the last 3 months. And I'm lucky I got it.
After completing the class, Sorley walked out of the Montana State Prison on October 24th of 2024, 2 years and 5 hearings after he was first granted parole.
My parole plan has never changed. It's been the same thing every time. I've had a lot of support show up, and you're just lost because how can something work once and then never work again, and then work again, and then, like I said, you're a hamster on a wheel, and you're never getting anywhere.
In Cascade County, Josh Rackey says in many cases, getting on the hamster wheel in the first place could be easily avoided with well-funded treatment programs, which can be hard to come by in Montana.
One of the things we have trouble with, and this does affect somewhat prison populations, I think, and is kind of sad, is very often we have either someone who's straight mentally ill, but we often have people who are mentally ill and it co-occurs with substance use. That's not uncommon at all. And if mental treatment's backed up and it takes you 2 months to get in, what can they do, right? Except for watch it spin out of control when maybe you really want help. Maybe the person's too far down the road now.
For John Binkley, that road ended in Garrison, Montana, after leading police on a high-speed chase from Belgrade, during which he fired a gun at a Gallatin County detective. He had been overusing prescribed medication.
I had never personally seen someone in psychosis before. You could not convince him that he was John Binkley. You could not convince him that we were in the state of Montana. He didn't know who I was. I was trying to get him help so badly. I had law enforcement at my house on a number of occasions. Everyone kept just saying, I'm sorry, we can't get him help. They said the best you can do is try and keep him at home, take his keys away, and hope the psychosis passes. We were trying different medications, and then eventually he left that night, and then what happened, and here we are.
John waited in the Gallatin County Detention Center for 3 years before sentencing, where he experienced violent withdrawals and attempted suicide.
My kids are going to be 11 and 13 when he gets the opportunity to be out. I don't know how to explain it to them. Your classic way of describing criminals in prison doesn't pertain to their dad. And I don't think it pertains to a lot of people in prison.
Crime is not an easy snap your fingers problem you can just whisk away. You've got to improve people's health care. You've got to give them an education. You've got to improve their economic opportunity, or you're going to just find yourself with full prisons yet again.
Prevention's hard to measure and takes time. So even if you made the most robust programs you could have right now, you're still going to need all those prison beds for a while, right? So they're going to overlap. You know, you really start to look at, can I save money in 10 years? Can I save money in 15 years? But in the meantime, we still have kind of, the backlog of people who are going to have to go to prison. So do we need more prison beds? We probably do. But do we need more treatment and, robust upfront things to try to prevent them? We definitely do.
For Impact, I'm Sam Wilson.
Montana just signed a new contract with the private prison company that has no cap on the number of inmates it can house. So far, the company has around 1,200 Montana inmates in its custody across multiple states.